Great. And thank you so much, Ed. And I really appreciate everyone being here. For those who don't know me, I'm Wes Geisenberger. I've been working in the Hedera ecosystem since open access in 2019. And I have the great pleasure to be joined by many of our partners in sustainability and the leaders in the Hedera sustainability ecosystem. With me to my right here, I have Frank Mwiti, a council member from Nairobi Securities Exchange, Bruce Keith from Regia, a global leading sustainability investor based out of Brazil, managing $3+ billion in assets, Raphael from Straatos, helping lead the digital submissions using the Hedera Guardian, in addition to Joe Dell'Orfano, the CTO of Verra, the world's premier carbon standard, who's also building on Hedera. And before we jump into it, I wanted to give a little bit of an update for those who don't know what we've done in climate sustainability for the past 6 or so years. Hedera has been investing in open source infrastructure led by the Hedera Guardian, our premier lighthouse project that's built the world's largest library of digitizing open source methodologies. New as of this year, we're actually able to maintain that here at Hashgraph, where I'm based, along with the open source development team. And that library is continuing to be built on by folks like Verra, folks like Straatos, and many others. But we've actually extended this into a group of sustainable impact studios, really focusing on sustainable finance, green bond issuance, payments of treasury for assets that are on chain, so we can follow the proceeds to the same accounts that are testing data using the Hedera Guardian. And we also got to announce over the past year that the UN Development Program, or the UNDP's National Carbon Registry System, is now integrated to the Hedera Guardian. And so all of this plumbing or digital infrastructure works together to bring finance to fund projects that are registered in countries and standards all around the world. And we're really excited to share a little more about what's going on with our institutional users of Hedera. And so to get started, I'd like to ask each of the speakers, maybe working from Joe back towards Frank, to introduce themselves and share a little bit more about their organization, a little bit about what they're doing on Hedera as well, and to help kick off the conversation, what you're excited about over the next year.
Great, well thank you, Wes. And hello everyone, I'm Joe Dell'Orfano, Chief Technology Officer at Verra. So as Wes alluded to, Verra is a leader in the voluntary carbon market. We have the legacy of being around close to 20 years now. We develop standards and methodologies that project proponents and project developers leverage globally. So we are just about in every country of the world. And because we are a legacy standards body, we have some baggage, I'll call it, in terms of level of uncertainty, or our durations tend to be fairly prolonged, or that is our historical perspective on the part of some folks. And so what I'm really excited about to talk about today is what we're doing to transform that paradigm. And we are really shifting to digital first perspective, and really excited by the partnership of Wes and frankly the folks here on the team as we're leveraging Hedera to really help in that digital transformation. So let me just talk quickly about some of the things that we're doing. So first off is that leveraging digital platform with Hedera. So we're in the process of digitizing methodologies or policies, as they're alluded to on the Hedera side. And what this does is it gives project proponents and developers an ability to bring data into the process. Historically, things have been done via paper, Word documents, PDFs. And so this really changes that paradigm, gives us information in a digital format, which we can leverage to improve integrity, quality, gain insights that have not been available in the past, which ultimately will help to automate and increase the efficiency of our review timelines. So that's what I'm most excited about, and how we're leveraging these technologies to transform our processes.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Raphael. I'm the founder of Straatos, and we are a grantee from the Hedera Foundation, working on actually helping the origination and life cycle of the project from a digitally structured format, leveraging like the Hedera Guardian in order to bring like the data from the ground to the ledger. And we basically leverage like digitalized methodology so that this information can flow through the system and become accessible to all stakeholders involved from the standards, the auditors, but also the community that is at the main part of it. And so that like other institutions and stakeholders, like for instance on the demand side or the finance side, can access like the same information in a trustable and transparent manner to accelerate the process and bring like climate impact at scale.
Thanks, Raphael. Good morning. I'm Bruce Keith. I am the Chief Sustainability Officer at Regia Capital. We're based in Brazil. My name is not very Brazilian, obviously, but we are a Global South leader in sustainable finance and ESG-focused investments. We currently have about $3 billion US in assets under management. My job coming in as of last October is to double or triple that over the next 3 to 5 years. We want to drive capital to climate across these sensitive biomes like the Amazon, like the Chaco, and then across other parts of the world, not just Latin America. And we want to do it at scale. So there are a large number of institutional investors, some here in the audience right now, who have essentially unlimited capital to drive to climate solutions and aren't really ready to do so, as much as there's intent and conviction. And I'm trying to figure out what that gap is, and I think this audience and this panel here can help me with that. What I've found, and I have notes because we just got off a call this morning that really drove home some of the issues I needed to talk about, but finance moves at the speed of trust. And if you don't have the trust layers in place to where the institutional investors can deliver capital to climate at the scale that's needed and at the capacity that they have, it's never going to work. It's been sitting on the sidelines trying to find what is the architecture and what are the trust mechanisms so I can go back to my board or my credit committees or whatever it might be and say, I am willing to put in hundreds of millions into these solutions, driving real capital to climate, to development, to impact, as my mandate says I have to, but I haven't figured out how or why. And so in the call this morning, people talked about that a lot. It's like, how can you show me that? How can I drive my capital? Where is the trust? And the trust is not, the technology. It's in the architecture around it that can drive the capital to it. The trust is from provenance to consumption. Where is the carbon credit coming from? Where is the commodity coming from? Where is the solution coming from? And where is it being consumed? Who is going to be canceling that carbon credit, right? Who is using the offset? Who is using the product that's coming out? How is it going to reach CBAM rules if I'm exporting a product from the Amazon into Europe, right? The systems are there, just nobody's brought them together properly. So the second, how do I have full accountability? So these investors will know, where is my money going? How is it being spent? Is it hitting the projects as it's supposed to? And is it having the impact that you claim it's going to have on the ground? So full accountability of use of proceeds down the chain, but full accountability of delivery of impact and results all the way back up the chain. That then leads you to the reporting. They need full reporting. If you want to trust, you have to verify. Reporting, data, information, that is the verification. That's where you build the trust. But all these pieces have to come into place. And so the full reporting, it's not just for the institutions or the governments or regulators or the DFIs. It's for your own investors, your own people, your own team. You have to have it up and down, full accountability, full governance. So we're not talking about a tech story, we're talking about a governance story. And that governance, that oversight, that control builds that trust. So my question here is, the money in the audience is ready to go. The techies in the audience are ready to build. Can we work together to build the trust infrastructure that's required to drive capital to climate at scale? And that's what Regia wants to do. We want to be on the ground driving your money and your technology to these solutions for the next 50 years.
Good morning, everybody, and I'm glad to be here. So my name is Frank Mwiti. I'm the CEO of the Nairobi Securities Exchange, based out of Kenya, and we are also members of the Hedera Governing Council. The NSE, in short, is a full-service exchange offering securities just like in your main markets here. So equities, derivatives, fixed income, etc. But more specifically, in our part of the world, in Africa in particular, sustainability and climate change are real issues. It's a very real issues. And so our view is that if we have to be relevant in our economy and our part of the world, we have to be able to offer real solutions that help mitigate and reduce the impact of climate change and sustainability. So what we chose to do is to play our role by looking at how do we enable capital, global capital as well as domestic capital, to flow to projects and interventions that look to solve this issue. And to do that in a way that brings integrity and credibility to the process, and more importantly, enable the related instruments to actually trade in our market. So, for example, when we joined Hedera, one of our key use cases was that we wanted to build a carbon credits exchange. We also want to be able to enable capital to actually flow to project owners who do not have access to capital, so that then they can originate and structure projects that then come to our market and can be funded. Currently, the discussions we are having with Hedera is to leverage the Hedera Guardian to underpin our carbon credit exchange. Number two is we are looking at actually offering tokenized securities that reference carbon instruments. And so we are working very closely with Hedera on that. In fact, we signed an MOU in Q4 last year with EverCity to collaborate on that. We actually think that this planet cannot actually be sustainable if Africa is not sustainable. And I think I stand by that unless Africa is sustainable, a planet cannot be. And so we think that actually there's a real use case here to join forces and partner with some of you in this room to respond to that. What is lacking in Africa is credible capital. The projects are there, they are profitable, the impact is very real in people's lives and the larger planet as a whole. But I think we need partnerships to actually tackle this, because what we're dealing with is a very complex and very significant issue that really no one country or nation or in fact an exchange can actually solve for. So partnerships, I think, is what we are looking for. But as the panelists have said here, I think the technology is there. There's credible standards on how to issue instruments around this. There is real projects that actually are bankable. But I think the partnership is what is lacking. And hopefully in the conversations we'll have, we'll bring more transparency on how that can happen. Thank you.
So I want to kind of treat this as rapid fire. So we have an institutional exchange with NSC, institutional investors, the world's largest and premier carbon standard, as well as the folks who are making it faster working on the ground in Straatos. So I want to start with Raphael and say, well, when we talk about those projects, what is the benefit of digital? What is the blocker? And why is it better? Why did they change? And why did they do it on Hedera?
First, I think Bruce is saying that this market finance move at the speed of trust. These markets grow at the speed of trees, and what we need actually is like digital and especially like DLT to help us to be like moving at the speed of Formula One, so that like we can really like have something where the data is not siloed in, it can be shared across like different stakeholders and be accessible to all in order to like make these things go faster, so that all the parties can actually benefit from that. And that's the digital layer that we're looking to build on. So yeah, all we need actually is like more consensus, getting like all the people to go, and when we have a leader like Verra that actually like embrace the technology and go through like making it happen and show it to the market, that helps to solidify the effort and get like everybody on stream.
So maybe I'll turn that to Verra. When we talk about speed, what's the difference in speed? And can you describe the yesterday state and where we want to be tomorrow? And what does that mean from your perspective? How is your business changing, both at the high level and then on the ground?
So let me talk about, we've got 3 pillars that we're working toward. The first is trust and integrity by design. It sounds like a Hedera Hashgraph, so you can borrow that from me. But that really is about understanding what are real projects where we can leverage the forces here on this stage and move them forward. And we're doing that by digitizing them in Hedera, which provides that trust layer that hasn't previously existed. In addition to that, we're working on resilient and scalable operations. So we developed our in-house project hub, which has an ability to integrate directly with the Hedera network. We're in the process of migrating to a new registry with S&P. We're implementing CRM systems, and so really looking at the process from a holistic perspective, end to end, and saying traditionally, what are the blockers, and what's the technology that we require to take out that uncertainty? And then we're also looking to automate the workflow, and we're already seeing signs of improvement from that. So we've automated what's called the project review report, and as of today, we're rolling out our digital review tool, which is what our internal staff are using. And already we're seeing incremental improvement in the time it takes to review a project from start to finish. And so that will be transformational. And then over time, we're looking at how do we introduce innovation responsibly. So embedding AI into the process to understand what are those insights that we can glean from the data, but it's not to replace the workforce. Really, we want that to enable how do we take risk out of the process, how do we bring more certainty, and then ultimately the human resources is the one that's working directly with stakeholders and developers to ensure long-term integrity for these projects.
So each one of these projects, just to put it in perspective, is not just data that was in PDFs yesterday and is moving digital today, but it's actually working with communities on the ground and bringing real capital, whether it's in farms, forests, industrial power plants. Oftentimes it's anywhere from $5 million to $100 million that goes into these projects. When we think about investments, a lot of times they're nature-based if they're in the Amazon, but they don't have to be. There's plenty of carbon credit methodologies that define that. When it comes to capital, what do you need to say that I trust this, Bruce? And Frank, can you follow up on that? What do you need to be able to list that and trade it?
We need to, we need to show that we're fully compliant on the capital stack, not to, to our investors, to the regulators, to the projects, to the communities on the ground. And so you have to layer in that at every level. And so as an asset manager, we have our asset management systems, we have our IT platforms, we run it all. That is nowhere near enough to build the trust for real money to come in and do this at scale. So you can start right now. So in Brazil, you have in Pará, and I think some projects that Verra is under or manages, they've stopped every RED Plus project because they can't prove that they've had the consultation and approval of the local communities. If I can have the system that Hashgraph offers with the information that you build and provide through your system, I can go back to the authority and say, no, we've already done that. The information is there. The data is there. There has been free, prior, and informed consent. Here's the sign-offs. Here's the documentation. Here's the title document, which lets me do the baselines that Verra needs to do its calculations. First level of trust, that on the ground, we've got everything in place, and I can prove it. All these projects are on hold because they got to go back and find all the paperwork and go back to those communities. And those community councils have probably changed in the last 2 years. So how do you track it back? So we layer that in, and the next, how do I work on that to the next level? So my capital is going in. How do I track it? What's the accountability? What are all the accountability standards on that? But also all the issues on how do you report on the impact and the impact coming back up? Because that creates a high integrity carbon credit. And then how do I report on it? So the third layer there, above Hashgraph, is all the different systems, AI, Verra's regulations, local regulations, ground level information, all the things that are reporting back, fed through AI systems, that feed back into my systems and me to approve all this and then report it. So if the authorities come at me, I can report it. If the Guardian newspaper says I'm screwing over these communities, I've got proof that I'm not. Actually, I'm doing greater benefit than anybody else. If my investors want to come and say, show me what's going on with the money, I can do it. If the World Bank comes back and says, hey, are you meeting all our protocols? I can report it. I don't have 500 people on staff who read all the stuff from all these projects across all these regions in the billions of dollars that I want to invest. I need a system that does all that for me, and then the human element at the end confirms it, writes up the right reporting from it, and gets it in the right hands to protect our money. That protecting means trust. That means the communities benefit.
So the way we're looking at it is, the first bit is the work that we've done understanding this space. Funding is actually not the issue. I think the last report I read is over $3 trillion in ESG earmarked funding available globally to go into projects. So what is lacking is credible projects that can attract that capital. So the way we are approaching it is three phases. The first bit is we have to have the right policy, the right regulations, and the right standards to actually enable bankable projects to come to the market. And so we on our side, we are working very closely with our government and our regulators to make sure that the policies that are formulated, the regulations to operationalize those policies, and the standards that are adopted enable credible projects to come to market. The second thing is the technology to underpin that, to bring the credibility to the process, which is why we are focusing on using Hedera Guardian as the backbone for that. The second phase in our part of the world is funding those projects. And so for you to originate structure projects that is aligned with policy, regulations, global standards, to actually attract capital, what we are then finding is we need to be a bit more innovative around that. And what we've zeroed in on is carbon forwards. So if I can conceptualize a project, and let's say it's worth $100 million, and I'm looking for that capital, then using carbon forwards, I can essentially pre-sell the carbons that come out of that project, raise the capital to originate and bring the project to life. And then when that has happened, the third phase of what we are focusing on is tradability of the credits that come out of those projects. Hence the reason we are in the process of setting up a carbon exchange that will enable those credits to then be traded on a platform that is regulated, that is licensed, that's aligned with global requirements, so that then the tradability and the liquidity that comes to those credits is worth actually catalyzing the entire process. And we think if you look at it that way, ensure policy standards and regulations are global standards, come up with an innovative way to enable capital to flow to fund the projects, and then enable tradability of the security of the credits that come out of it, and that cycle is complete. And I can assure you, at least in our country, there's already carbon credits being traded bilaterally, of course, off exchange and in very fairly grey space. So we want to bring all that into a more transparent ecosystem, and that will also help with attracting more capital into this team. Thanks.
So just to drill in there a little bit, how do you prove that capital makes its way to the projects on the ground versus the traders at hand? Can you talk about that maybe, because we only have a couple minutes left, 30 seconds, and I'm going to ask the question to follow up. How do we want to make that happen collectively on stage, and where do you want to see that in the next 3 years, 5 years? How that change presents itself.
Okay, if I use our traditional instruments that we've used to fund projects, so think green bonds, think climate bonds as an example, use of proceeds is a key determinant on whether the issuance will be successful or not. And so at the end of the day, it comes down to, can I for sure be able to track that the dollar that went into the green bond actually went to fund the project, and that the project is doing what was stated in the prospectus or offering documents. So the traceability end-to-end that is required for that is what we are seeing actually Hedera Guardian bringing value to. The transparency around it, the ability to query it, and the ability, of course, to audit it.
I'm going to jump over to Raphael to answer that question, come back to Bruce, and with Joe there.
So to agree with Frank 100%, we want to be able to actually channel this information in streams that help to show where the money is going, where it comes from, and which co-benefits it actually brings. And so we have a layer built inside Straatos called Cui Bono, which means to whom it benefits, that can help with digital systems to track this from end to end.
So, and for folks who want to turn that into DLT terms, that's following it in dollars on Hedera to the same accounts that are attesting data. Bruce?
I have nothing to add. I mean, this is exactly what we need and what we're looking for. If you've got the regulators saying that's how it's done, and you've got the systems development saying that's how we do it, that's what I need to link throughout all my systems.
And finally, I think digital's in the DNA, right? So it delivers trust, transparency, predictability, and through things like DMRV, we can start to do more frequent issuance and enable all the good things that we've talked about today.
So with that, I want to say thank you to everyone who's here. If you're a project in the room, a capital investor, please come up, talk to some of these folks, everyone here is looking for partners and ways to get this done. In Hedera, we build everything open source and climate and sustainability. And so there's always an opportunity to get involved. And with that, I'll say thank you all and looking forward to engaging for a really great HederaCon. And if you can give it up for these great speakers, appreciate you all coming today.